In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I created this design in Photoshop. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So first of all, this is the design right here. The first thing we are going to do is hide my layers right here. So I'm just going to hide the layers. Now the first thing we started with was a white background like this. So after that, I just added a black background just like I've done right here, and make sure that my background is not all the way black but somewhere in the dark black area, something like this. So I clicked on OK. Now the second thing that we did was just adding some lighting effects. So how to do that is, number one, you are going to add a new layer here, and then I'm going to select my brush tool right here. So with the brush tool, I'm going to come and click on the color picker, and then I'm just going to pick a brighter version of my background. So I can sample my background here, and then I'll just drag it on top of this right here. And then we can now create our lighting effect here. But now how you create the lighting is based on the picture that you are working with. In this case, I was working with the product right here. So I needed to make sure that the product really stood out on the design. So now what we are going to do with the color that we sampled here, still working on the background, I'm just going to hide this. Still working on the background, I'm just going to add some lighting here, just to mimic the kind of lighting that we have on the image right here. And then I'm going to add another layer here, and now we are going to do the opposite of what we just did. I'm going to sample down here, then I'll make sure that I keep it I make it a bit darker so that we can have highlights and shadows right here. So I'm just going to add another shadow right here, so you can actually zoom out, see the design very well, and then add it right here. Now the next thing I did was just finding some images online. So the first thing I did was go to Pinterest, and I found some images on Pinterest. Now this right here was the image that I found. But then if I bring in this image right here, so this image right here was what I got from Pinterest. So you found this image right here on Pinterest, and every resource that I use here will be linked in the description below, so you can go and download it. With this picture right here, what I did was bring it into Photoshop, and you can see from the layers that I've done here, I was able to manipulate it by changing the colors and just layering it on top of each other to achieve this right here. So now it's just this image. So I brought in this image right here, and then what I did was change the color by pressing Ctrl+U to bring up the hue and saturation. Then I pick colorize, and I'm just going to saturate it right here, maybe change the color a bit to something like that. And then I'll just bring it down right here. But now when I'm doing this, I'll make sure that my product is actually in the background and it's placed where I want it to be placed. So we are going to have something like this. Now the next thing that I did was just place it right here, max it out, add my layer max, and then just erase some parts that I don't really need, something like this. And now I did the exact opposite, or you can do the exact opposite, and then just flip it to the other side, and then we can have something like this. Another image that I'll be linking into the description was this image right here, just to spice things up in Photoshop. And now what you can also do is, maybe since it's a smart object, we can also edit the saturation and then maybe change this color. So you can play with it anyhow you want to, but this is how I was able to do it. Now we are just going to add this image right here just to spice up the background. Now still on the background, I added this dark layer here, but we are not going to add it right now. We're actually going to go further and see how we are going to do it. Now the next thing that you can see in the background is DJI OSMO Pocket 3. So because I wanted the 3 to actually appear in the background, if I double click on this layer mask, you are going to notice that the 3 is actually a stroke, and then my fill is actually 0. So what I did was that I go to my blending mode, and then I'll just make sure that if I bring in this fill right here, you are going to notice that the fill here is now the white. But then you disable the fill, then you add what we call a gradient stroke. So the gradient stroke, to do that, you come to gradient instead of color, come to gradients, click on this. Usually when it's on black and white here, so you can pick black and white, and then just make sure that we show only the white. Now to do that, we are going to click on this right here, the upper one, the upper selector right here, and what we are going to do is reduce the opacity from black to white, and now we are going to have that exact same effect. You can see the preview right here. And now if we click OK and then we close this right here, you are going to notice that we are going to have that tree. So I made sure to make it very big, not too obvious on the design. So that is why we have it just chilling in the background right here. Now, next thing I did was actually bring in another image. So I just duplicated this image right here, the blue image, duplicated it and brought it on top of this image right here. You can see that my background is made up of a lot of layers, so I actually just add these glows on top. Now to add a glow is actually very simple. Just create a new layer, use your brush tool, sample a color from this side. So I'm just going to sample this color in my case here, then I'll change it from normal to screen. Now changing it from normal to screen makes it glow, it just makes it brighter. So if I click here, you're going to notice that the whole place just brightens up. I can do the same thing for this side too, just makes the blues also pop out a bit. Now I'm just going to add this right here. And then another thing I did was also just keep adding glows. I added another glow here too. So if I hide my product image, you can see that all that we've done right here, is just been a bunch of glows. And the glows are what makes it captivating when you are far away, or when you are scrolling through your page and you see that kind of thing. It's just going to make you stop scrolling. So I'm going to bring back my subject right here. All right, so you can see that I added this light ray at the back right here. Now finding these light rays is very simple. You just need to search on Pinterest. So I'm just going to search on Pinterest light rays. So searching on Pinterest, you are going to notice that it's going to give us a lot of light rays. So I'm going to take this one exactly. That's the exact thing that I use, but you can also choose from a bunch of images that we have. So with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click. And since we are working on a background, we don't really need it to be that much. We don't need it to be that much quality, because the background most of the times is just usually a bunch of elements that we are bringing in together. So I'm just going to paste it in Photoshop just like what I've done here, and then I'll change my blending mode from normal to screen. Now you can see that when I change it from normal to screen, you can see there is this lines that is showing that we don't really need them, because it's going to also affect our design. It's going to appear in our design. So to get rid of that, I'm going to press Ctrl+L to bring up the levels, and then I'll just take my shadows and just increase the shadows a bit. Now, if I increase my shadows, you are going to notice that that white lines that we had right here will also disappear. This means that we are just increasing the darkness of our image. So we are going to have our normal light rays over here, and we are going to add glows on top of it in the when we continue. Now the next thing I just brought in was the title right here, so that we had a title here. I'm just going to replace this with this right here. So we added the title right here, and common a text layer that I just added the title. Now this is where I added the other elements right here. So if you can notice that this fill here is 0. So this is kind of like a glass effect, but not really a glass effect. You can see the effect right here. So I'm going to walk you through how I did that effect. Now to do that, you come to, after creating your rectangle, your rounded rectangle, you just double click on it right here. So you double click on it, you go to gradient overlay. The first thing that you are going to do is disable the fill right here. So just make sure the fill is 0. Now you go to your gradient overlay. Your gradient overlay, I'm going to make sure, just like we did with the stroke, I'm going to make sure that my whites are not really appearing. So I'm just going to change the opacity from 0 to from 100 to 0, and then I'll relieve the blacks right here. You can choose to reduce the opacity or transparency of the white, but I usually just leave it like this. And now to really bring out that effect, I'm just going to come to my stroke and I'm going to click on the stroke. And now the first thing that we did with the tray, the stroke effect that we did to the tree, we are just going to apply that same stroke right here. So you are going to notice that our effect is now going to move from just this right here. Our effect is going to move from this right here and now changing into 0, and then we have our final effects right here. And that is how I was able to achieve this effect right here. And now moving on, I just added a bunch of stuff. Most of the times these things usually just add layer after layer and just keep improving on the colors and everything. Now the other thing that I did was add a shadow. So I added a shadow. I created a shadow of this device right here. Now to create the shadow, I'm just going to double click on it, and then I'm going to come to my drop shadow, and I'm just going to create a shadow right here. And that shadow is kind of going to be on this black rectangle right here. So if I increase the opacity, you are going to notice where our shadows are, and our shadows are kind of here, but I want it to be a bit bigger. So I'm just going to increase the shadows right here, and I don't want it to be overpowering, so I'll just reduce the opacity just like what I've done right here. And then I'm going to do something here that I usually do a lot. I usually separate the effects and put them on new layers so that I can edit them individually. So that what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. So I'm going to right click on my image right here, and then I'm going to click on create layer. So let me do it again. So I'm going to right click on a drop shadow right here, and I'm going to click on create layer. This is going to create a new layer for you, and then you can do whatever you want with that layer. In this case, I'm just going to max out the parts that I don't really need. So in this case, whatever that is on this right here, I don't really need it. So I'm just going to remove the shadows from parts that I don't really need, and that is how it is usually done. Now we are going to tackle the lighting once again. You notice that we've created a bunch of lights at the back right here, and now we need it to actually appear very natural. So we have to make sure that the lights at the back actually affects our image right here, and that is where highlights comes into the image. So to add these highlights, there is usually a very simple way that I come up with these highlights, and one way you can do that is double click on it, and then we are going to use the inner shadow. So I'm going to select my inner shadow right here, and in the inner shadow I'm just going to reset it to default so that we can all be on the same side. So now if I increase the opacity to white, then click outside, I can click and drag over here so that you can see the effects really working on my subject already. Now since the lighting is coming from this side, we are going to make sure that the light catches the edges of this, because naturally that is how light works. When light hits you on this side, it's supposed to create the same highlights on the other side right here. So we are going to do that same thing right here, and now what we are going to do is maybe adjust this right here. So I'm just going to drag it out and make sure that I'm really getting the highlights here. And now what we can do is adjust the color. So I'm just going to change it from normal to screen, and I'm going to select the color. Instead of it being white, I'm going to sample the dominant color that is coming from this side, which is the yellow color. So I'm just going to sample that yellow coming from this side. So that is what we have right here. And then we've created our highlights. That is our first highlight. But also notice that this side, a blue color is also being done over here. So we have some blues in our background, and we need to make sure that it also appears on our image or the subject right here. Now what we can do is right click again. We are going to right click on our inner shadow again, and then create a new layer. This is going to separate the layer and put it in a new layer. And now what we can do is add a layer mask, and then we are just going to subtract it from this side of the image, because the yellow is not really reaching that part. So it's not necessary when you have the yellow switching over there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is double click on it once again, and I'm going to come to inner shadow again. Now we are going to create another inner shadow, but this time we are doing that for the blues. So I'm going to drag it, and maybe just drag it a bit, and what we are going to do here is also sample the blues that is coming from that side too. So something like this. So we are going to have something like this. Now you can see that the blue, we have the catch lights over here, is catching the light very beautifully, and you can see that the product really is inside the image, or is kind of blending with the whole image right now. So I'm just going to create a new layer again by right clicking and selecting on create new layer or create layer, and then I'm just going to erase parts that is not really necessary. So I'm just going to make sure that my light is really subtle. You have to be careful when you're doing this and not to overdo it, and this is good right here. And now time for me to just add the details that we had already. So I found these details on their website. Just arrange it very well, put nicely over there, just like what I've done right here. So I created a rectangle right here, and I just added an outer glow. So an outer glow is just something that is going to glow outside of the image. You can increase it like this, so you're going to notice that it's going to increase. But since my rectangle is very small, my glow size is actually going to be very small, so that it will just pop out the details, or it will highlight some of the main details that we want people to see. Now I found a screenshot too online, but then that screenshot, it had a black background like this. So now when you bring in this black background stuff, and all of the text and icons here that I needed was all white, so it wasn't really difficult to remove the background. What you can do is you change the blending mode from normal to screen. This is just going to subtract the blacks and leave the white in there, so you can have it just like this. So I made sure to place it opposite here, so that you read this first, and then if you are still looking at the design, you can see some of the details that we have. All right, so after adding all these details, our design is pretty much done, but we just need to add this buy now, or a call to action. So the buy now, it's just the same thing that I did with the you can add a gradient filter, you add a stroke right here, and you can either increase your fill or just reduce it to 0, and then we have something looking like this. And now you can also go in there, create a gradient layer, and then I'll just make sure that my gradient here, I'm just going to change the color from yellow to black, and then we are going to have something like it. And in the gradient tool, when you're in the gradient filter, you can actually just click and drag outside to adjust how you want your gradient to really affect the rectangle that we have. Now we are just going to add a bunch of glows just like this. So I'm going to teach you how to add that same glows that you just seen right here. Now, why are glows important? They are important because we have the light coming at the back, and here obviously you can see that the light is very bright. It needs to be on top of the image right here, so that we can sell the effect of the light being really very bright, and that is just going to be our attention grabber. So I'm just going to sample, just like we did in our backgrounds. I'm just going to sample a color here, and I'm just going to change my blending mode from normal to screen, and then I'll just click right here, not on the subject or the image here, but just right here, so that the light really comes from the corner. What you can also do is select your brush again. What you can also do is select your brush again, reduce the opacity, and then you just create that glow in the corner right here. So I'm just going to increase it more, and we are just going to sell that effect right here. And I'm just going to add another layer. You can do it on the same layer, but for safety, I'm just going to add another layer, sample this color, and then I'm going to do that same thing right here. So I'm just going to click on screen and just kind of mimic that kind of glow effect right there. So you're going to notice this is the before and this is the after. It just brings out the image more, and it just grabs that attention on there. And now it's just a bunch of me adding a lot of things, or a lot of details on there. So it's just me adding this kind of detail right here. So now we have this text right here, and I really wanted it to appear there. So if you scroll down here, you'll notice that I added a black color right here. So I just added a black color on top of my background here, so that it's not really affected that much, and then the text will be visible a bit. And that is what I did. And now the last effects that I added was just these particles that I got. And now to find these particles, so you can come on Pinterest right here and then you just search particles. So I'm just going to search particles on Instagram. And so usually when I see something, I'll click on it. It will show me more options. Then I'll just look through and see what I like. So I'm just going to click on this. It might show me colored versions of it because I'm looking for a colored version. So I'm just going to scroll through, and this is how you usually find all these particles on Pinterest. So I'm just going to pick this one. It's kind of like yellow, and then it will show me more yellow versions of it. Then I'll click on this, and so I'm looking for something along the lines like this one right here. This is really nice, but I'm looking for something brighter. So you can see that I found this effect right here, which is very nice. So I'm just going to right click, copy my image, then I'll take it into Photoshop. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste it right here by pressing Ctrl plus V. You press Ctrl plus T and then you edit it, just reduce the brightness, the size a bit. So I'm just going to reduce the size a bit, and now change the blending mode from normal to screen. And now we are going to have this effect right here, and I'm just going to place it right here just to bring in more effect in the glows. But you can notice that there is still some lines in here. If I zoom in, you can see the lines of the image. What we are going to do is press Ctrl plus L once again to bring out our levels, and then I'm just going to increase my levels a bit, not too much, just so we cannot see this the white backgrounds again, the lines again. And I'm just going to reduce it more, and I'm just going to place it right here. And you can add a layer mask right here, and you can just edit the parts that you don't really need, because what we are trying to do is just make sure that this product stands out in the image. And now what I did was just add a couple of glows to really accentuate that glow that we have right here. And yeah, that is pretty much how I was able to create the design. The last thing that I do whenever I finish a design is take it into camera raw filter. So I'm just going to press Ctrl plus E, and then I'll come to filter. Then I'll come to camera raw filter, and what I do in camera raw filter here is just increase my sharpness a bit. So I'm just going to increase my sharpness and make sure that the design is actually very sharp right here. If I need to edit the colors, usually I come to the color mixer, pick the yellow color right here, maybe increase the saturation right there, tweak it a bit, take it toward the reds, something like that. If I want to edit the blues, same thing. I'll just kind of edit the blues, increase the vibrance or the saturation of that, and I'll just click OK. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how I was able to create this design right here. I hope you've benefited from the breakdown, and I hope you've got something. This wasn't really, I just wanted to walk you guys through how I was able to create it, not really kind of create the whole thing. But I hope you guys have learned one or two things, and if you've learned something, don't forget to subscribe, share with your other designer friends so they can also benefit. I'll see you in the next video, and as always, let's keep creating. Peace out.